Welcome to another Alia Graphic Creator Chat. My name is Jurgi Urrutia from Kingston Libraries in Victoria, and I'm also the convener of Alia Graphic. Today we have two incredible guests that I'm so happy to have both of them together, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful conversation. But before that, first, as a national group across the land we call Australia, I would like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Personally, I would specifically like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, who are the custodians of the land from where I'm speaking and where I work as well. And I pay respect to the elders past and present of all First Nations people across the land. Now, Jason and Remy are with us today, and we've had both of them on our podcast before, and we had their books featured in our notable Australian graphic novels list as well. Welcome today to Create a Chat.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, we've had you before, but just in case there's someone who doesn't know you yet, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly? So who are you, where you're speaking from, and what's your favorite thing to do apart from making comics? Maybe Jason?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'm Jason. I'm based in Adelaide. Firstly, I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm meeting on traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and just pay my respect to elders past and present. I'm a graphic novelist, and I make animation and do like designs for animation as well. My first book came out a couple of years ago with Treasure in the Lake, and my latest one came out maybe 3 weeks ago. It's called Ember and the Island of Lost Creatures, and as I said, outside of that, I do designs for animation and a lot of production design stuff, and I also make my own animation. And apart from all that stuff, I like to play with my 3-year-old daughter. I don't have a lot of time outside of those two things, but I like to play soccer as well, and just whatever I can do, whatever I can fit in apart from that. Just relax, just resting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Women's World Cup now, actually.
Yeah. I was annoyed that I couldn't watch the opening game last night.
Yeah, good stuff. And what about you, Remy?
Hi. I live in Brisbane, and I'm an author and illustrator, and mostly of graphic novels. So my latest book would, of course, be Ghost book, this one. Hobbies. It was really hard to find a hobby because for a long time drawing and writing was my hobby, and now that I'm doing it for work full time, it was I would say it was really hard to find a hobby. So I don't know if I found it, but I spent a lot of time with my dogs here. One of them is here. He's woken up.
Yeah.
Cool.
The famous dog I've only seen it on Instagram.
Yes, yeah. Famous, definitely. Yeah, so we've got these two books. They're amazing. I encourage everyone to read them. I absolutely love them. Thank you for sending this to me. They're amazing books. Amazing graphic novels. My son is 12 years old, and the first thing I did was give them to him, and he absolutely loved them as well. He was so excited, and he really loved your art styles as well, which we're going to be talking about that as well, because he has always been a voracious reader, but just lately he's started making comics himself as well. And he's never done any drawing class or anything. He's just figuring it out by himself. But he absolutely loves that. So but could we talk maybe a little bit about your creative process? So how do you start with your graphic novels? And do you write an outline and a script and then do the thumbnails, or do you go to thumbnails directly? Or what does the story kind of come fully formed, or you just have a vague idea? What's your process? You want to start maybe, Remy?
Yeah, sure. I think for different, the starting idea and like how the ideas come about will be different for different books. So I'll just talk about Ghost book. So this one, the idea first came to me with the characters. So these two, the main characters, July and William. So they came to me in my head like many years ago. And so they appeared in my head, and I knew that one of them was a ghost or something like a ghost, and they were friends, and that one would sacrifice for the other. But I didn't really know what the story was, and then I tried fitting them into many different stories over the years, but it wasn't right until I figured out the hungry ghost angle, and then just once I figured that out, the story clicked into place. And then once I got that, I started writing. So for me, because I work closely with my editor, so I would send him like a really short few sentences pitch to see whether he likes the premise. And then if he says yes, then we'll go into outlining. I like to do outlines because if I pants my way through a story, I would write like a million words of a story that goes nowhere. So for me, I like to outline it. And then from there, I would start writing. And I don't really do thumbnails just because I cannot read my own thumbnails. And I go, it's so small and too rough, and I just can't read it. So I would just go straight to sketches and laying out the whole thing after the manuscript is finished, and after I've gone through rounds with my editor editing the manuscript, then I would move on to the sketches. So that's basically my process.
That's cool. With my son, like, I'm trying to stay a little bit, like leave him to do it. I don't want to, be butting in all the time. But that's one thing that I said to him, like, you need to have at least a little bit of an outline so you know where the main story beats are. And then you can still change it and improvise as you go, creating every panel or every page. But, at least it's a bit of a map where you're going. And it's working pretty well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know, for me, I learned the hard way that I need an outline. But I do know other authors who don't need outlines, who work better without outlines. So I guess it's important to try different methods and see which one works. Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I've definitely learned the hard way as well. I think with Treasure in the Lake, I just started drawing pages, like not even like sketches. I was like, it'll be fine. I'll just draw it and I'll make it up. Because I think I had in my mind like the idea of these characters finding a lake, and that seemed easy to get to. But as soon as they got there, I just had no idea what was happening, So I kind of developed a bit of a process during that book I think also pitching the book, you have to actually present an outline. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll do an outline, and then I realized like, oh, they're really useful to plan. So I think now I do a similar thing. I do thumbnails, and I can't read them either. They're almost like just memory prompts or something for me. But yeah, I my basic process now is I'll do an outline that generally is it's kind of like too long for a short outline to present, but too short for something like really useful. But I'll do the outline, try to get it down to like a page, and I feel like if it's working on a page, then it's like a nice overview, and I've got a good overview of what the story is. And then after that, I'll kind of split up each scene and almost like you kind of like unfold it like an accordion, like you're trying to get more detailed, but not try to lose sight of that whole the overview that you're kind of happy with. I think that's been working the best for me. And like, it sounds like you're like, for your son to be doing that at this age, he's definitely got a huge head start on how I worked.
Well, it's as I said, it's hard not to butt in all the time because I really want him to find his own style. But you know, I was a teacher before, and I was a media studies teacher as well. So you know, it's kind of ingrained in my brain. Like, you know, you need this, you need that. You know.
Well, I know with I might be completely getting this wrong, but I thought I read somewhere that or seen Miyazaki, the animation director, working. And it seems like he does just kind of go straight ahead with his storyboards and just kind of work the story out, like almost like from a linear fashion from the start to the end. So, and you kind of get a different result, maybe like you get more of a little bit more of a stream of consciousness thing to it. And I guess if you're making so many things, you start to kind of if you've made so many things, you start to understand the highs and lows of the story as you're going. You know, you probably don't need to plan it as much, but I definitely do need to plan it a lot.
And look, even though he retired about 10 years ago, he is releasing a new movie this year, which I'm really excited about. So I'm dying to see what he's done. So next question: do you work with pencil and paper, or digital, or a mix of both? What's your process? And let's start with Remy again.
So for me, I do digital just because paper and pen is really slow for me. I make a lot of mistakes, and like right now, I think Ghost Book took me 10 months to draw, not even to color, just to draw, and digitally. So if it were on paper and pen, I don't know how long it would take, 2 years maybe. And also I hate scanning, so so digital works best for me.
As I said, I did do thumbnails, and I just did them on paper. I've got one. They're so little, and they're like that big. Probably the blurring's like ruining the picture, but they're so little that I can't write any detail, and I can't even write dialogue or anything. But for Ember, I did decide to do that, and behind me is like a big magnet board, and I tried to put it up there like a big kind of like a storyboard, like how you see like animation studios do.
Yes.
So you can move the story around and stuff, and that was really helpful. But it still did end up. Well, I think I didn't scan it. I took a photo of each one and had to pull it into Photoshop. And I feel like from the outline to the story to the thumbnails to doing the final thing, like the story kept changing anyway. That it wasn't but after doing these pen and paper thumbnails, I did it was 100% digital after that. I just work in Photoshop.
Sorry, Jason. I'm curious. So you mentioned the dialogues earlier. So you don't write a manuscript, do you?
No, I don't write a script.
When do you decide? At which stage do you decide the dialogues?
Through the thumbnails, I kind of like I'll put little speech bubbles that are just kind of like it's kind of like just trying to find like the rhythm of the dialogue. And kind of I'll write little things in the corners or on the back of just things almost that they need to say, like if I have a really nice idea that I like about like a single piece of dialogue that comes to mind, then I'll write it down. But a lot of the time it's just like it's just information that I need to put in. So I'll probably write the dialogue as I'm setting up the page, like the final layouts, which is I don't know if it might be one of those things again where eventually I'll start just writing a script and I'll go, oh, this is way easier, I should just do this. But I think that so much of it is like, because I have so many ideas just purely on the layouts and the flow of it, that I feel like if I wrote a script, then I can't see how it slots in yet. So I feel like I don't want to write any. Do you write a script?
I do. From my outline, I write a script. And then from there, I do the layouts. For me, my script is pretty much set in stone. It's not 100%, but if I could see that it doesn't work with the layout, and then I just change it.
Yeah. That's probably a better way to work, really.
No, I think whatever works for you. I mean, it's working for you, so.
Yeah, I kind of like I can imagine what the characters are sort of saying and kind of what they need to say. So like I'll figure that out at the end. Yeah.
So at which stage does your editor come in and look at your work?
Probably at the initial stage, just the outlines. Just making sure that like thematically they're happy with it. And then I'll do like a really, really rough layout pass of the whole book in Photoshop, and I'll just put in a lot of rough dialogue through that. And I think if they're generally happy with that, then I'll go through and lay it out much better and do better drawings and
Cool.
there is a big gap, I guess, between the initial outline and then the seeing visuals for me, because they can't really understand what's happening in the silence.
It's really, really interesting to hear how different creators work, because I've heard all sorts of different things. So it's beautiful, and I think at the end of the day, it's whatever works for you, and it's obviously working for you. So, but what's your favorite part of the creative process? And maybe we'll start with Jason this time.
Yeah, it probably is that outline stage, just because you can change things so easily, like change giant sections. You go, oh, I've got a better idea, and you just write it in. It's a new paragraph. And also it's perfect at that stage, because you haven't had to execute anything yet, so you're 100% like, this is the best thing ever. And then as soon as you start drawing it, you're like, oh, I'm not quite happy with that drawing, and that dialogue's not quite right, and so I like the outline stage because it's all big ideas.
For me, I think I really like the revision process of the manuscript. My editor will probably say I'm lying, but but when I get his notes, I get really excited, because now I can see like how I can improve the manuscript. I mean, I would still complain and whinge about having to revise a whole lot, but I think for me that is one of the most exciting parts.
There's a Simpsons writer that I always think about called I don't know if anyone's heard of John Swartzwelder. He's like the classic Simpsons writer, and it sounds similar that he always says that he essentially writes a whole episode of The Simpsons in like one afternoon. He'll just go up and just write it out with just the worst dialogue, just pattern dialogue of like what needs to be said. And he's similar. He says like after that it's really easy and he loves it, but that initial stage of just getting it all out is really painful. And then after that, it's just this nice thing where you're just decorating it and slightly improving, tweaking, and
Cool. Now, as I said, my son read your graphic novels and loved them, and he actually commented on your art styles as well. He really loved them, and as I said, he's starting to make comics. He's trying to figure things out, and he wanted me to ask a question for you, which is, by the way, not in the notes that I sent before. So this is a new one. The question is, what was the hardest thing for you to learn when you started drawing comics, and what did you do to improve? What's your advice?
Ooh. Should I go first?
Yeah.
Yep. Hardest thing to learn. It was probably I mean, we've already talked about it, but it probably was that planning, really, of like of trying to get that overview. I think so. And then apart from that, I went through a lot of different art styles, trying to narrow down what Treasure in the Lake would look like. I come from doing animation, and we're having to use like lots and lots of different art styles. So I didn't really have one style to work with. I think initially I wasn't using line work, and I was just kind of trying to paint everything. And I was like, I'll make something really different that doesn't look like a comic. And then slowly I started going, oh, there's probably a reason why people were using ink, and yeah, it looks nice on a page, and it kind of corresponds to the writing. And yeah, so it took me a long time to figure out what the comic should look like. Yeah.
How about you, Remy?
Yeah. So for me, also similar to Jason, where you start drawing because you get excited and then you realize the story doesn't work. Because I mean, I learned, of course, the hard way that the story, I think, really always comes first. I mean, and a good art and good artwork will really help lift that up. But without a good story, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I grew up reading manga, and I grew up copying all the different art styles in manga. And then of course later on I graduated to other comics from like North America and French comics. So when I was a kid, I did try out all the different styles. And so for now, I also actually really enjoy like deciding which style should go with which story. So for example, for Pawcasso, the dog book, the style is actually a little bit simpler than Ghost Book, just because Ghost Book, I think, is for a little bit older audience, because it's a little bit spooky. It's not very spooky, but it's a little bit. So that's really fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And you've also done early reader graphic novels as well.
Yeah, and that one had to go even simpler, because I knew that I had to go to schools, and then I like to do drawings with the kids, and so I need to be able to teach them how to draw simple things. So I went with a simpler design.
Yeah, and they are beautiful, and they're really doing really well. Like at the library, when they come back, they fly off the shelves.
Yay, thank you.
Which actually brings me to kind of the next question. I mean, Treasure in the Lake and Pawcasso were your first graphic novels, and they were really, really well received. You know, and at the moment also, like junior graphic novels, middle grade graphic novels, like they're flying off the shelves in libraries at least. You know, well, what's it like suddenly being in the middle of this kind of popularity? Did you expect that kind of response, or was it a surprise to you? Jason?
Should I go first? Yeah. It's very fortunate, I think, that it's kind of I've started making them at this time, where there is such an appetite. And I think I started trying to pitch Treasure in the Lake in 2012 or something like that. And in a way, it was kind of like fortunate that it didn't get picked up back then, just because the market's grown so much. Like there's been a few big creators that have really made it a huge thing for kids. So yeah, very, very fortunate, and very appreciative. Yeah.
How about you, Remy?
Yeah, for me, I also felt like finally, because I've been making comics for so long, and then it's like finally the others are catching up. The publishing world is catching up. So I think the readers were always there, but then they were waiting for the publishers to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, Pie in the Sky was very well received as well. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I probably started making comics because of that big wave of books as well, to be honest. Like I probably wasn't reading that much before 2010 or 2009 or something like that. I think I started reading books from like Nobrow, and started I just started that. It was kind of on my radar a bit more, and I think I started making comics because of all that. So I'm kind of a product of the wave as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So Jason, you've done animation as well, and children's shows and things like that. Remy, you also published fiction, you know. So when an idea comes to you, how do you decide if it's going to be an animation or a prose book or a graphic novel, or do you know from the start, or what's it like?
Yeah. For me, I kind of came into comics because I really wanted to tell like bigger stories. With animation, it just takes so long to like. I remember working on like a 6 or 7 minute short film, and it took probably like 20 people about 3 or 4 months to make this short film, and it's only a very short little story as well. So I think I started to get a bit dissatisfied with telling such small stories that, especially it's hard to do dialogue as well in animation. So I wanted to tell a big story about characters talking to each other, and so I think coming up from that, any big story would definitely be I'd be looking at graphic novels for. But I also haven't made animation for a while, that kind of longer animation.
Yeah. How about you, Remy? Are you gonna be doing another book, a prose book, or are you like, no, I'm loving doing graphic novels and I'm not looking back?
Yeah, well, Pie in the Sky has a bit of prose, but I actually, when I first got the idea, I wanted to do it as a graphic novel just because that's what I did. But then when I started drawing it, I realized it didn't really work because the main character doesn't speak English, so he doesn't speak a lot. And that means if I want readers to know what he's thinking, I would have to use a lot of thought balloons, and I don't really like that. And so that's why I went with half prose for that one. And then I have a book coming out next year called Read at Your Own Risk, which is in a similar format to Pie in the Sky. It's half prose, half illustrations. Yeah. It's a spooky book. It's a lot scarier than Ghost Book. And I just thought that it didn't really work as a graphic novel. It's in a diary format, and it's a lot spookier when I don't really show them what's going on. Instead, I use words so that they can imagine the scary parts themselves. I think that's a lot scarier. So, so for me, when I get my ideas, I do have like an opinion on what the format should be, but then as I'm writing it, I might change.
Cool. So let's talk about your new books. All right, because this is why we're here. So. Jason, Ember and the Island of Lost Creatures was published last month, and it's an absolute delight. I absolutely loved it. It's a really, really heartwarming book, and I had so much fun with this one. Now, for those who haven't read it, can you tell us what the story is about?
Sure.
Without major spoilers.
Yeah. The story follows Ember, who's this little. It's gonna mess it up again.
Yeah,
yeah, that was better. This little guy, and he's really little. He's like tiny little boy who's like, I think he describes himself as like the size of a teacup. There he is, next to his friends. So yeah, he lives alone in this giant city, and he kind of wants nothing more than to go to school and make friends. And really struggles, obviously, because all the kids at school are giants. And then one day he kind of gets washed out to a beach, meets a sea turtle who promises to take him to this mysterious island that's full of other little creatures, where he can go to school and go on adventures and learn about the world. And when he gets there, he still struggles to make friends, and he kind of has to unravel this mystery that threatens him and his classmates. The book's kind of about, people often say it's kind of like about found family. The turtle that he meets is kind of like his adopted mum, and it's just about also struggling to fit in like a new social environment. I went to a lot of schools, I think like about 9 schools over my primary and high school. So I got very used to like starting school, and I really wanted to represent that feeling of starting a new school Yeah, even though it's a weird school with little bugs and salamanders and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense. That's a lot of schools, by the way.
Yeah, it's too many. Yeah, we don't even know why, really. We often joke with me and my siblings about whether we were in like a witness protection program. We just weren't ever told. But yeah, I think my mum, we just moved around a lot. My mum, did up old houses and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can see that. There's a lot of about friendship, but also a lot about family. That definitely in there. It also looks like you had some fun with repurposing things, and using them in different ways, and also including some science facts or animal facts there. How did you go about that? What was the idea? And
yeah, with the science facts, like it feels like people might think like, oh, he's intentionally included that stuff so it's like educational or something, but it just came from like trying to figure out what happens, and especially with the characters, like I love the idea of putting these animal characters in it, and then I was like, oh, I probably need to think about like there's a character that's like a salamander, and initially she was a axolotl, and I started to think like, wait, can axolotls live out of water? So I researched it a bit, and it's like they can only live for like a few, like 40 minutes or something out of water before they die. So I was like, oh no, so I have to change it to a salamander, and then that naturally just kind of fed through to the story and the dialogue and the way the characters would introduce themselves. And then I just started really loving that process of researching the animals and trying to kind of put that into their character somehow. And the same with the environments as well. Like there's information about kind of how caves are created, but a lot of that is also due to just kind of narrative things, like trying to figure out how the characters navigate these caves. I had to actually think about like how caves form and how water flows through them and that kind of thing. And the whole theme of the book, I think, is it's got this kind of mimicry feeling to it. That this character comes and that this like grand mimic. And I liked how kind of like a cuttlefish can kind of change its skin, and I really like how that that corresponded with that feeling of going to school and like trying to fit in and trying to hide in amongst the other people. And then the little things, like I'm a huge fan of like any story that has like the borrowers, and my favorite Ghibli films is like Arrietty.
Yes,
and it's like I think that's the best example ever of like that, like a story with like little tiny people that they have to repurpose things, because that film's amazing. And it also, it's really fun just because it's like being a little kid again, trying to create little sets out of random objects. But yeah, it's fun to be able to do that in a book. It's also funny that like trying to tell a story that has like dramatic points, but characters are still like wearing little like fishing bobbers as like satchels, and it's kind of like a nice, but like juxtaposition. I think.
That's cool. It's really cool. So Remy, Ghost Book has just been published, and is quite different to Pawcasso and Surviving in the Wild. A little bit spookier, as we've said before. I really loved it as well, and the themes of life, death, friendship, sacrifice you mentioned before as well. Like the story actually really touched me, and same with my son as well. So for those who haven't read it, can you tell us a bit about the story?
Yeah, I will, but give me 10 seconds. Hold on.
Sure. And we're going to an ad break.
Okay. So I made these things for my school visit, so I will use them here now. So this is Ghost Book here, of course. and it is about this girl, July. So here is her face. So there, yeah, that's her. So July. So she's weird in that nobody ever remembers her or ever remembers her name. Even her classmates who've been in the same class with her for years, they don't remember her name. It's like she doesn't exist. And the other weird thing about her is that she can see ghosts. So yeah, really spooky. But for her, because she's always been able to see ghosts, she's not really that bothered by them, and they don't really do anything to her. But the most annoying thing, I guess, about being able to see a ghost is that her father doesn't believe that ghosts exist, and he always gets really angry with her whenever she talks to a ghost or talks about ghosts. So she pretends that ghosts don't exist. But one day she runs into this ghost. So this is a little boy ghost. His name is William. And he notices that she can see him. So here, they're not looking at each other here. So, but she pretends that she doesn't see him, but he keeps harassing her. But then later she finds out that he is not actually a ghost, so he's not really dead. He's actually a wandering soul. So his soul has left his body, and it's unable to return to his body. You know, it's a really bad time to be a wandering soul. Not that there's a good time, but it's the 7th month on the lunar calendar, and that's when hungry ghosts come out from the underworld and they roam the living world. And one of those hungry ghosts, they're not as cute. They're actually really spooky. So this is one a hungry ghost here. So they would eat a lot of things, including wandering souls. So you can see now this hungry ghost wants to eat William. Sure. So now July has to figure out, oh, how do I help William? How do I put his soul back into his body so that he's safe? And while she's trying to figure out, she finds out that her fate is connected to William's. And in order to put his soul back to his body, in order for him to live, she has to die. So dun dun dun. That's the gist of the story.
Excellent. It's a really beautiful story. And actually, one thing that I really enjoyed and really stood out to me is that there's a lot of beautiful world building there as well. So, you know, how did you go about creating the world of Ghost Book, and were there any influences there as well, you know?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in Singapore, so I was around all this Chinese myths. It was just part of my life. So and it just felt natural for me to put them into my stories. And then of course and also growing up, I saw many different interpretations, many different retellings of all these Chinese myths, because I grew up in Asia. So when I was writing it just felt natural, and it just felt natural to put my own spin on things. So for example, the street markets in the underworld, it just felt natural because there are lots of street markets in Asia. So it just makes sense, like for there to be street markets in the underworld. And then, of course, we had a fabulous colorist. Her name is Nina Gilliard, and so she was the one who did the colorings on Ghost Book, and so she's fantastic.
That's cool. I watch a lot of Chinese movies, and I love one of my all-time favorites is A Chinese Ghost Story. Beautiful movie. So there you go. Jason. Same thing, actually. Like, you know, how do you go about world building in your story as well? Because there's some beautiful world building there as well.
Yeah, a lot of it's definitely the environments and stuff are all based around like my childhood. Yeah, my dad had this like shack up at Hardwick Bay, a place at Hardwick Bay on the York Peninsula in South Australia. So a lot of the environments and everything are based on that. I remember at this place they have these beaches that go out for sometimes, you know, like hundreds of meters, and there's like rock pools and islands that kind of form and disappear out of sandbars. And I remember looking back, it was really magical place because there was all these like little creatures that I had no idea what they are. I remember like lying down in the sand, just playing in the sand, doing something as a little kid, and these like weird little creatures came. It sounds weird. Weird little creatures like came out of the sand, and I was like, "What are they?" Like I had no idea what they were. And then they kind of like went back in the sand and disappeared, and I'd never seen them before or since. And in my mind, they were like axolotls or something. And I grew up and was like, they couldn't have been axolotls because they're like, we don't have them here. I think they're only in like Central America or something like that. Someone recently told me that they were like mud skippers probably, but I just didn't know there was these weird creatures. But yeah, it just made it feel so like such a little magical spot. Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of it came from, and also like holidays through South America. Yeah, I mean, very very drawn. I think when I'm starting a story, the setting is what usually starts the story for me. The character almost comes second or at the same time. Just feeling, yeah, being in a place and get the atmosphere of that place is really evocative to me.
That's actually cool that you mentioned that, because it's true in both of your graphic novels, the setting is really, really key and really important for the whole story. And one thing that I really like with you as well, that you've done in both of them, is actually you have a lot of pages that are silent, where we just, you know, go through the environment, or you know, so yeah, like silent sequential moments that are really beautiful. So yeah, that's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's just just wanting to exist in the space in my own thoughts. Yeah.
Cool stuff. Now, a question that I've already heard from a few kids at the library is, will there be a second book? The plans for a second book, Jason? What's next?
Oh yeah, I definitely have plans for more Ember. Nothing's official or anything yet. But yeah, trying to plan for more, and hopefully it goes well and the publishers are on board and all that. So yeah, just waiting to see how it goes. And but yeah, I've got plans for where it's going to go now, and I'm pretty excited. But
well, it's just been published, and I already had a couple of kids asking me, is there a second book? Like, no. This one's just been published. So
tell them to talk to the publisher.
Yeah. What about you, Remy? Like, you've been very prolific, actually, since Pawcasso was published. You know, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. You know, what's next for you?
So I have the book that I mentioned earlier that comes out next year, Read at Your Own Risk, which is a very scary book. I think Ghost Book is maybe 4 or 5 out of 10 on like the spooky factor, but the one next year is 10 out of 10. So that would be different. And then after that, I have more graphic novels coming out. So I'm working on those graphic novels right now. But I would love to do a Ghost Book sequel, but I don't know yet. I feel like there's another story there, but I haven't figured it out yet. So yeah.
But funny you talk about the 4 out of 5, 4 out of 10 spookiness, because I really loved how I really love the balance you have of the comedy and the spookiness in it. Even that first scene is so good. Like maybe. But it was really atmospheric and kind of somber at the start, and then that first joke you introduced, where the characters don't know which way the underworld is. They're like, "Oh, the underworld's this way." Actually, like it was so perfectly like cut through the tension of that scene, and like kind of set up the idea of the that balance of like the humor and the spookiness. Like, yeah, and
Yeah,
I wondered
thanks.
whether that that is also a product of you like having a special process where you sit down and actually think about the dialogue. 'Cause
Oh,
I feel like I have to make up jokes on the fly, and like maybe it would
right.
be better if I just sat down and thought about them.
Yeah, that joke in the prologue was definitely deliberate because I think like the opening scene is really important to set the tone,
Yep.
to set the reader's expectations of what they're about to read. So I spent a lot of time on the openings, and as for jokes, yeah, I do have to really think hard about them because my editor also reads the manuscript, and so if a joke is not funny, he cuts it out. So I have to think really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Do you ever
that's
say
cool.
like, but I can sell the joke, the characters will look funny or something like that?
Sometimes I would say, sometimes I knew that he wouldn't find it funny. So I would leave a comment in my Word document and say, give this a chance, give this a chance.
That's cool. Uh, I'm a big horror fan, so I'm interested to see what a Remy Lai horror looks like.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, you got me on that one.
I did want to ask Remy one last question on the prolific kind of front, like how you manage to balance all your projects, because you like have so many projects and they're all so high quality. I wonder how you like do you just do them one at a time, or do you like bounce between them like during the week, or
I
like, what's
bounce
highest
between
priority?
them. I
Sorry?
bounce between them. I bounce between them, but maybe not in a week, but maybe within months. So I would
Yeah.
work for something for months because you know how like in publishing you have to wait for like your editor to get back with you with notes, or
Yeah.
to get back for editing to comes back. And so during those lulls, I would just work on another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have too many ideas too, so I just want to get them all out.
Well, that's good.
And a lot of hard work, I imagine, as well, because drawing takes a long time. So I know that doing a graphic novel takes a very long time. So yeah, you must spend a lot of time working pretty hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how Jason can write and draw. I mean, draw so quickly and color, because I don't color. So if I had to color, I cannot. But
Yeah. I think the doing that animation stuff like for so long, I think something about that business kind of like really makes you very frantic with your drawing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you color your work yourself, Jason? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that's.
But for this one, I think every single book I do, I think this time I won't have any line work in the background and I'll just paint it. And then I just go back, I run back to the line work, going, no, I need lines to figure out what's going on. But yeah, for this one, I kind of tried to find a balance between the painty stuff and the line work. So a lot of it's like there's one page at the start, there's barely any line work. So I kind of have to, I don't know if anyone else could color it, like where they're like going into, I mean, even this one where like the damn blur.
Yeah.
what page is that, Jason? Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. It's 32.
Okay.
Yeah.
32.
Yeah. So a lot of it's not even line work. It's just it's just painting, and I found that really fast.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, at the end of our creator chats, we actually like to get book recommendations or graphic novel recommendations. So can you please mention a graphic novel or two, whatever, that you've been reading lately and that you recommend to everyone? Of course, we recommend these two, absolute beauties.
Yeah.
Read them and put them in kids' hands. They'll thank you for it. But yeah, what do you recommend, Jason?
I read this is definitely not for kids, but the Slaughterhouse-Five graphic novel that came out a few years ago. It's by Ryan North who wrote it, and was it Albert Montes? Obviously, Kurt Vonnegut wrote the original book that it was adapted from, and yeah, I really love that. A lot of it just because it would have been such a hard book to adapt. There's a lot of like the timeline's very non-linear, and there's a lot of kind of abstract concepts in it that they had to adapt, and I thought they just did an amazing job. So that was a big one. But I also read through.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also read through Cuckoo by Joe Sparrow that has beautiful, really beautiful, very minimal, well, kind of minimal design work. Very sharp, and yeah, like I feel like I just couldn't do this. Like it's so like nicely designed. But yeah, I recommend that as well.
Cool stuff. What about you, Remy?
I've recently read and loved it's by Graham Annabelle, School of Screams. So it's a graphic novel with I think 4 short stories, spooky short stories. So that one I really loved it. And then the one I'm looking forward to reading is by Emily Carroll, Emily, who does spooky books, spooky graphic novels. So she has an adult one coming out. It's called, I think it's A Guest in the House. I think that's the title. Yeah,
Sounds
I'm
awesome.
looking forward to that one.
I think one of her short stories is it Into the Woods? Was like maybe the biggest inspiration for me to like getting into comics. That his Facial read. I'd read that every like few months. I go back and read it. It's so good. But yeah, I'm so excited for that book.
That's cool. And Remy, you're obviously going on a spooky phase. You're in the middle of a spooky phase. It's like, no, I just need more spooky stories. Cool stuff. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful to catch up with you too. And I hope that the books do really well. And yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to chat.
So thank you everyone for listening or watching if you're watching in YouTube. And there will be more creator chats this year as well. So we do them when we can because we're all volunteers in this group. But yeah, light up your brain and read comics.